The country trying to end this war is being bombed by one of the countries it is negotiating with at the exact same time. On June 10, 2026, as Iranian missiles were still in the air over Gulf targets and American strike aircraft were completing their third wave of attacks against Iranian radar and air defense positions near the Strait of Hormuz, a Qatari diplomatic delegation landed in Tehran. Not after the shooting stopped, not during a ceasefire, during the shooting. That one fact tells you more about what Qatar actually is than anything else you will read about this war. If you checked your gas prices this morning, you already have skin in this game. Every gallon of fuel sold in the United States right now carries a war premium baked in by the very instability Qatar's trying to resolve. Every retirement account that swung on the April 17th oil crash was responding to a crisis that Qatar is the only country on earth currently positioned to defuse. You are already paying for this war. The question is whether anyone can end it. Here is what nobody in Washington is saying out loud. Qatar is the single most dangerous country in this conflict. Not dangerous the way Iran is dangerous, with ballistic missiles and fast attack boats. Dangerous the way a surgeon holding the only scalpel is dangerous. Because if Qatar loses its nerve, makes one wrong move, or gets hit by the wrong missile on the wrong night, the last functioning bridge between the United States and Iran collapses. And there is no backup. By the end of this video, you will understand three things that almost no major news outlet has connected. First, why Qatar's unique position between the United States military and the Iranian gas economy makes it the only country capable of brokering this deal. Second, why that same position makes Qatar a target that could be eliminated by accident. And third, why the tiny emirate of 2.9 million people is negotiating not just to end a war, but to survive one. Let us start with the geography, because the geography is the entire argument. Qatar is a peninsula roughly the size of Connecticut, jutting into the Persian Gulf from the Arabian coast. It shares no land border with Iran, but 30 kilometers beneath the floor of the Persian Gulf, Qatar and Iran share something far more valuable than a border. They share the single largest natural gas reservoir on the surface of the planet. Qatar calls its share the North Field. Iran calls its share South Pars. Together, they contain enough natural gas to supply the entire world for decades. And every cubic meter of Qatari gas that gets liquefied and loaded onto export tankers travels through the Strait of Hormuz, the same strait Iran is threatening to close, the same strait American warships are currently escorting commercial traffic through under Operation Project Freedom. This is revelation number one, and it changes everything about how you understand Qatar's role in these negotiations. Qatar is not a neutral mediator in the way Switzerland is neutral. Qatar has a direct, catastrophic financial stake in the outcome of this conflict. Qatar is the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. Every single export tanker it operates leaves through the Strait of Hormuz. If the strait closes permanently, Qatar's entire economy stops generating revenue. The sovereign wealth fund that Qatar has spent 40 years building, currently valued at roughly $450 billion, with stakes in Heathrow Airport, Volkswagen, and dozens of American financial institutions, was built entirely on gas exports that travel through waters Iran is threatening to mine. But here is the detail that oil market analysts are not connecting clearly enough. Qatar is not just a country that needs the Strait to stay open. Qatar has kept the Strait from becoming a permanent war zone for the past 2 decades by maintaining one of the most unusual diplomatic relationships in the history of the modern Gulf. While Saudi Arabia and the UAE have treated Iran as a regional enemy to be isolated, Qatar has kept its gas channels with Iran's South Pars field quietly operational through every sanction regime and every period of American-Iranian tension since the 1990s. Qatar has been doing business with Iran for 30 years. Iran knows it. Washington knows it. And that history is exactly why Qatar was the only country both sides trusted when Pakistan's mediation collapsed in April. Stop for a moment and think about what that means in practice. The country hosting the largest American airbase in the Middle East, Udeid Air Base, home to more than 10,000 American military personnel and the forward headquarters of U.S. Central Command, is the same country that has been the primary back channel for Iranian diplomatic communications for 3 decades. American bombers taking off from Qatari soil to strike Iranian targets are flying out of a country that Iran considers a functional partner. That is not a contradiction. That is the entire reason Qatar still has a phone number Tehran will answer. But here is what Qatar has not told Washington. And this is the part that explains why a Qatari delegation was sitting in Iranian government offices while American munitions were landing on Iranian radar sites. Qatar's mediation is not purely altruistic. Qatar has calculated that the alternative, an Iran destroyed militarily but not politically settled, is an Iran whose Revolutionary Guard factions, no longer constrained by any central authority, become free-ranging actors, capable of targeting Qatari infrastructure without a chain of command that could be deterred or negotiated with. Qatar has seen what happened to Lebanon, to Yemen, to Syria. It does not want that outcome on the other side of the Persian Gulf. This is revelation number 2, and it is what should concern every American watching this war through the lens of victory and defeat. Qatar's mediation is not about sympathy for Iran. It is about the fact that Qatar physically cannot survive an unconstrained Iranian civil-military collapse. The North Field gas reservoir does not care which faction of the Iranian government controls the coastline above it. Iranian fast attack boats operating without centralized command can reach Qatari waters in under 6 hours. And if those boats decided on any given night to treat Qatari gas infrastructure as a legitimate military target, Qatar's sovereign wealth fund would become the only thing left of an economy that had been vaporized overnight. This is also why the June 10th strike exchange matters specifically for Qatar. Iran's IRGC that night launched attacks on the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, a naval air base in Jordan, and struck a water and power plant in Kuwait. Kuwait shares the same coastal exposure as Qatar. Every Gulf state on that list received a message that Iranian military action is no longer confined to Iran's declared enemies. Qatar received that message with a diplomatic delegation already in the air toward Tehran. Now consider the specific diplomatic mathematics that puts Qatar in this position and not any other country. Pakistan tried and failed in April. The Islamabad talks produced a 2-week ceasefire that has been violated so many times that Tehran publicly called it meaningless this week. Pakistan could bring both sides to a table. Pakistan could not keep them there, because Pakistan has no economic leverage over Iran and no military relationship with the United States deep enough to guarantee anything it promised. Qatar has both. Qatar can tell Iran, Your gas partnership with us depends on a stable Gulf. Qatar can tell Washington, the diplomatic channel we have kept open for 30 years is the only one you have left, and it closes the day you expand this conflict past the point of no return. This brings us to revelation number 3, and it is the one most analysts are missing entirely. Qatar is not just trying to end this war. Qatar is trying to define what the Gulf looks like after this war. The ceasefire framework Qatar is currently proposing to Tehran includes 3 elements that go significantly beyond a simple military pause. A verifiable agreement on Iranian uranium enrichment, a framework for reopening the Strait under a multinational transit authority involving Iran and the Gulf states, and a bilateral economic normalization track that would restore the cooperative gas management framework between North Field and South Pause. If those 3 elements survive into a final agreement, Qatar will have engineered something no American president has managed in 45 years of American-Iranian hostility. A regional architecture in which Iran has economic reasons to maintain stability rather than destroy it. The prediction markets are beginning to reflect this. The probability of a formal ceasefire announcement before June 30th moved from 14% to 19.5% in 48 hours on the news that a Qatari delegation had arrived in Tehran while the shooting was still active. Professional risk analysts are betting on Qatar's leverage in real time. Here is the question that matters, and the United States government does not have a clean answer to it. Qatar is doing something no American administration has been able to do, maintaining simultaneous credibility with both sides of the most dangerous military confrontation in the Middle East since 2003. The risk is that Qatar is also doing something uniquely dangerous, making itself indispensable to a negotiation that could fail at any moment, in a conflict zone where a single errant strike could remove it from the board entirely. Al Udeid Air Base is a target. The Qatari Peninsula is a target. The gas fields are a target. And the Qatari royal family running this mediation has no nuclear deterrent, no standing army capable of projecting force beyond its borders, and no treaty that would automatically bring a great power to its defense. Qatar is betting that being indispensable is the same as being protected. In every war that has ever been fought in this region, that bet has eventually been tested. Right now, on June 11, 2026, with American and Iranian aircraft still exchanging fire over the Strait of Hormuz, that test is live. Is Qatar the most important country in the world right now? The one actor whose survival is the prerequisite for ending a war already reshaping the global energy market, the global internet, and the financial accounts of hundreds of millions of ordinary people? Or is Qatar a country that has dramatically overplayed its hand, building its entire security strategy on the assumption that both sides will permanently choose negotiation over escalation? Write your answer in the comments, because the people who say Qatar has cracked the code of modern Gulf diplomacy, and the people who say Qatar is one bad night away from becoming the next target, are about to have the most important argument on this channel.